If I could only read your mind with superhuman power, life would be a breeze sometimes. The good stuff's in between the lines, my thoughts and my feelings still tell 1,000 lies. But now you're taking away my sorrow, you're taking away my fear. We're not promised tomorrow, so let me hold you close, my dear. Nothing's gonna bring me down, no thinking about the past while we're building for tomorrow. Nothing's gonna bring me down.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of The Good Stuff in Between with me, Shaun Milne, podcast where we go behind the scenes of the music industry to try and learn a bit from those who are already in the scene for those who are trying to make their own way. And if anyone is the epitome of what we're trying to achieve here, it is my next guest, Laura Silverstone.
Hi there. Morning.
Where do we find you today?
In my van in Edinburgh.
And not just any morning for you. This is launch day for your album.
Oh, it is indeed. It's an important day. A lot of pressure.
You had an event last night in Edinburgh at Sneaky Pete's.
It was amazing. It was, putting up the event and everything was incredibly stressful, but it surely paid back when you see all your friends in one room cheering for you and you think, how am I ever going to live up to this moment again? But
So we'll come back to the album in just a moment or two. Not everybody will be familiar with your work yet. You describe yourself as a travelling troubadour. As I can see, and as if anyone who visits your Instagram page will notice, you do have your own van. I think it's your second time round.
yes, it is my second van. First one was about 4 years, and the second one is another 4 years on the road. So, yeah.
What's the story with that then? How did that all come about?
Funny enough, I was living on the Isle of Skye, and I was really struggling to find accommodation, and I was working there, and somebody offered me a caravan, and so I spent a winter in a caravan on Skye, just thinking if I could drive, I'd be somewhere sunny right now. So yeah, I got my driver's license that same winter on Skye, and I bought a van, I converted it, and the rest is history.
You're a singer-songwriter of about 15, 16 years in the making now. You think previously worked as a sort of music composer at a radio station in Manchester?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well spotted. That was, my God, a lifetime ago. About 10 years ago, I volunteered as a songwriter for a radio station in Manchester and was involved with a couple of radio shows, which is great.
And this is just part of that journey you've been on, because looking at your biog, it seemed you've been sort of playing since you've been around about sort of 12, 13 years old. Was that something that sort of ran in family? How did it all come about?
It doesn't really run on the family, but when I was very little, my sister used to go to music lessons after school. And as a good younger sister, I was very, very envious of it. So I asked my mom to send me to music classes as well, and she did. And I'm very grateful for that. I learned the accordion, and then I changed to guitar when I was 13.
When did you start writing songs?
I remember writing music on a keyboard as a kid. Like, it always just felt natural and nice to play with it instead of play something, if it makes sense. And then I remember writing my first song properly when I was 14, and my mom's old Spanish guitar, terrible condition.
Do you remember what that song was about?
It was about Michael Jackson's death.
Wow.
Yeah.
So something quite light and breezy then.
Yeah, I suppose, 13 years old, what else,
Later on, you went to study music and higher education and performing.
I did. Yeah, I did for a year and a half and then I dropped out very shamefully. But after the release of the first album, I thought, but maybe, there's more to learn. There's always more to learn for sure. And I thought maybe I can go in and learn something useful. So yeah, I went to Edinburgh College and I did contemporary performance. During the second year, I dropped out because it felt like too much. I was trying to tour and release music and gig and sustain myself, and it felt too much.
The reason I'm asking all these questions is just the idea of, your childhood inspires your love of music. You learn some stuff when you're young, you continue that on. And now you're living in a world where much of your time has been as a busker. Plenty of people have seen you around not just Edinburgh, but you've traveled to Europe, to Asia, Australia, I think. Which do you think has been the most useful for you as an artist in your development of both your playing and your songwriting? Was it that formal education scene? Was that necessary, or do you think you've just grown and grown and grown by just doing it?
Just doing it, definitely. Education is great, and I do recommend it to people, but it doesn't make you a musician. It just gives you the guidelines to what you can do with it, basically. But busking's definitely been the the biggest thing I've done in a way. Since I remember, I've been a singer-songwriter and I've always wanted to be one and to make it. But about 3-4 years ago, I took busking seriously, and I thought this is my job. So I go out, come rain, come shine, I'll play, I'll get myself some wages doing this, and in exchange, you're not just getting to pay the bills, but you're actually getting better and better every day by doing it and exposing yourself to all these different situations that you don't know how are going to turn up. And yeah, it's just a fantastic way of pushing yourself, knowing that the harder you work, actually the more income you make, which is rare in a job. So yeah.
Often, if we have people on the podcast, there are people who are playing at festivals or they're playing at venues, perhaps releasing new music themselves. But I don't think we've had anyone yet who has made busking a career, their job, as you say. When you decided to take that step, what kind of approach did you go after? Because I don't imagine it's just a case of rocking up with your guitar and say, hey, let's go. You must be thinking about how it looks, how it sounds, where you're going to do it. Do you have to worry about any laws, for example? How do you make sure you're safe? How do you interact with the crowd and decide what's working, what's not working? Talk us through that a little bit.
I'm like, all of the above. I think, I mean, everyone's seen those videos of the professional, amazing violinists playing in the subway and nobody turns around to look at them. And busking can really be like that. So I think the science of busking is more about your surrounding than it's about the music or the content. A lot of it is studying the times of the day, the direction of the wind, and all the different scenarios that can happen and how you should respond to them. And that's a science in itself. It's like sociology. And I guess I learned from watching other people. I'm very lucky to have made Edinburgh my home for a few years now. And whenever the Fringe Festival comes around, I'm just surrounded by people who work as buskers all year long and everywhere in the world, and they travel doing that. And there's a lot of them who do that with the circle shows, with the jugglers and the clowns and escapists. Yeah, I remember in 2019 literally taking a notebook and sitting to watch every busker, and then writing down all the things that I thought were great, all the things that I didn't think were so great, or that I wouldn't want to do myself. And it started to take it more serious. And then I always considered myself a fair weather busker until 2020 came along. And of course, all my residencies, all my gigs that I'd cultivated for years, they all got wiped out overnight. So I wasn't left with much to do. So I started playing music in the street. I took the French attitude and I started doing it. And it wasn't until 2021 when I started to see other buskers as well coming into the scene that I was able to go, okay, let's do this full time for sure. And as you said, it's a lot of it, yeah, is your music, and that's that's what you're doing every day. But a lot of it is knowing where and when to be and how.
The pandemic must have been a very scary place to be for somebody whose careers doing music. And we saw some people actually had to give up their careers because they had other obligations and things. Was there ever a moment when you thought this is just too much and that your dream may have to be put aside?
Oh, absolutely. Maybe I'm a bit dramatic, but I genuinely thought for a few weeks that we would never live the lives that we had before, and therefore there was no room for music, for live music, which is my passion. And it kind of felt like, well, it felt like I aspire my entire life. I worked my entire life on being a performer and a musician, and suddenly the world I live in is no longer a place where I can do that. So it was quite existential. And I just dealt with it by just trying to avoid thinking about that and trying to live my life as close to normal as I could, just obviously knowing that I'm not doing what I love and I don't know when I will be able to do it again. But whenever I could sit down outside and play some music with friends, and I found community that way with the van life, that, you know, me and a few other van people would consider ourselves the same household, and we would get together and play some tunes around the fire, and it made me feel like I had a purpose again. Was my purpose, you know? Yeah, connect people, and when there's no people to connect, your life doesn't have any meaning anymore. So it was quite existential, yeah.
The line broke up a little bit there, but the sense of community that comes through there was going to be one of my questions about busking as well. Is there a sort of busking community as well as a van life?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some, particularly musicians, tend to travel in bands more. I think as we travel with a lot of gear. And then there are the circle shows, the jugglers and all of these people that they also travel all year long doing what they do, because I mean it makes total sense. You chase the season, and you know, I do love Edinburgh, but in January busking in Edinburgh is not the brightest choice. So yeah, there's quite a lot of community of people that travel all year round. And when I was in Australia, I went to the Adelaide Fringe, and there were so many performers there that I knew from Edinburgh that it just feels like you have a family everywhere in the world.
You say Edinburgh became home sort of 4 or 5 years ago. Where was home for you originally?
Well, it's been a bit longer than that. It's maybe been like 7 years in Edinburgh now. But before it was Skye and Switzerland. Actually, before Edinburgh it was Switzerland, and before Switzerland was Skye, and before Skye was Manchester. And when we go back, my original home is in the Basque Country, Bilbao.
So that brings me neatly on to the fact that you are not only a busker and a performer, but you actually made it to the finals of Spain's Got Talent.
Yeah, that was an interesting time.
It must have been surreal, but looking at the videos, it was full on showbiz.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the video is probably the only way that I process it as kind of real. It feels very different when you're on set because nothing looks the same. And it's really strange to be there in first person. It is really strange.
How did it come about? How did it happen?
Gosh, I was in Thailand, funny enough, and I was listening to a podcast, funny enough, and it was a podcast with a Spanish singer-songwriter, and she was talking about how she did some TV program, and when she came out the other side, she was huge, and she didn't know how to cope with it, and it was about that. And I was sitting there just chilling, listening, and I was like, maybe it's time. Maybe it's the time that I do some TV, because the music business feels like you're constantly chasing something that doesn't even exist. It's all an illusion. So yeah, I was like, maybe it's time I do some TV, and the worst I'm gonna get is a little bit of exposure. So why not? And within an hour of having that thought, I got a message from Spain's Got Talent that I hadn't contact. I hadn't messaged them or anything. They contacted me and they were like, we'd like to have you in the show. And a show, a friend of mine, and she was like, it's the universe. You have to do it. And it was quite tricky. I spent quite a bit of time arguing the contract and the conditions that I wanted, because I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I don't wish to lose anything I've built. So yeah, it can be tricky. And eventually we agreed on everything, and I turn up, and it's always kind of weird because they decide if you're good. And yeah, it was just kind of like I don't know, you let go of the control, and you're like, well, this is who I am, and I hope you like me and you make me look good.
And they did. I mean, the crowd and the audience, I'm sure they were encouraged as well, but they seem to be going crazy for you. The reaction from the judges was very positive, standing ovation, and then you got to pass through to the final. Was it something you think has helped your understanding of the business and given you that exposure you talked about, or is it something you look back on and think, "Oh, I can't believe I did that"?
No, it's not that black and white, for sure. I'm happy that I did it, and I think one of the best things about it was the contacts that I made. I met a lot of wonderful, wonderful performers in different fields, and I opened myself to a new audience, and I've had a lot of loyal, loving fans from it. Not huge, but I think it's always a few that count. It's what matters more. But yeah, it's neither. I mean, I'm really glad I did it. It's definitely not changed my life, but I'm really glad I did it, and it was definitely, I learned a lot from it.
What sort of things would be involved in a contract? So, say somebody else is lucky enough to be invited onto a show like that, who might not have the same experience as you. What might they want to think about before agreeing to go ahead?
I would say that, well, first, that I have a confidentiality contract where I'm not able to disclose a lot. But I'd say that the one thing that you should always have in mind is that once you've done your performance, you no longer have control over that. The media that's produced the videos, the content, it's theirs to use. And yeah, you don't have much of a say in after it's been filmed. So just be very aware that everything that happens escapes your control.
When you talk about videos, the reason I came across your music was the huge amount of effort you put into creating your own videos, your Insta stories, your social media. There's pretty high-end stuff in there in terms of how you do it, and you create this world, this, I guess some people would say a dream as well. It's almost autobiographical in the way you tell that. And if you scroll back right through your Insta, as I have, you can see that almost life journey, if you will. How important is that to you in connecting with your audience, or is it just something you enjoy doing?
I'd say it's 100% about connecting. I think that, like most creatives, I don't particularly enjoy sitting on my phone and going, let's make more content. But I'm aware that I found that music is what connects me with other people. And when I travel so much, yeah, there's a big amount of time when I'm out in the street connecting directly with people. But there's a lot of it that happens online because traveling on your own means you spend a lot of time on your own. And so that connection, I feel that the more true you are to the people around you with who you are and what you do, the more genuine the connection. And I think like people like to see that. People like to feel that you're real and they can relate. And then it feeds back and I relate too. And yeah, I think it's a wonderful tool for connection. But I definitely don't enjoy so much sitting on my phone creating, 3 Instagram reels a day.
How do you get your ideas of what to do? Do you sort of plan ahead? Do you just wake up and say, right, I'm going to do this?
I'll say mostly I plan ahead, but I leave some room for spontaneity. And I say, sometimes I go and I'll look at what other people are doing and what's working and what's the inspiration for it. And then I put that into my own story and my own songs. And then, yeah, sometimes I might have 3, 4, 5 ideas at a time, and I'll create all those videos and all that content, and then I'll schedule it to release at the proper times. And sometimes I'll run out of content because, maybe I've just been at a festival having a lot of fun and not being on my phone. And suddenly it's been 4 days and I go, whoops, I've run out of content. And then I log in and I do more of it.
Something I remarked upon when we featured your launch in our newsletter was you come across as being one of the really hardest working people around here. And you posted something online whereby you talked a little bit about that in terms of all the jobs that you have to do, everything from being your own management to your self-promotion, the touring, the admin, the writing, the recording, just making sure everything's happening when it should be happening. There's been pictures of you getting your t-shirts and getting them ready for sale, your box of 1,000 CDs coming through and talking through and autographing them and sending them out to people. That is a lot of work. Is it something you've just had to do, or would you like, given the way the rest of your lifestyle is, for somebody else to do that?
Oh, I would love somebody else to do it. I mean, I would probably be a terrible artist well, maybe no, but to manage, I guess I'm so used to being in charge of everything I do that I could be maybe a pain to. But I'm looking forward to somebody turning up and saying, can I give you a hand with this? Because it's like I've shared this experience with other musicians when you put so much work into, say, your launch party for the album, and then the night comes and you're like, I haven't even practiced. I haven't even prepared the music because I was so busy getting everything else done. And luckily, I still make most my income from busking. So I still have to get out and practice those songs, which is another thing I love about it. But yeah, I would love somebody to give me a hand because it's too much. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. If you don't slow down, I feel like you could burn out. And I working for the release of the album has been a bit like a rat race, really. 6 months of constant promotion. And I can't wait. I was like, I can't wait for it to be out before I realized, no, after it's out, that's when I really have to promote it. So,
And you've been
yeah,
quite open about this. I mean, you've been posting, you've been up at 2, 3 in the morning, still getting stuff ready before going back to your day job,
yeah.
as soon as the sun comes up, kind of thing. Has it been worth it now that the album's there, now you've had a launch? Do you feel a sense of satisfaction, or are you just like, we go again?
There is a sense of satisfaction for sure. I think that last weekend I was playing at the festival, and even though my sets were quite small and a bit out of hours, it was just fantastic to be there, surrounded by people, and to realize that a lot of people knew me. A lot of people remembered me from years ago, and it was constantly being reminded that people respect what I do and they know what I do and who I am. Everyone's watched the videos, and it was kind of like a reality shock that you can sit on your phone for hours and hours doing promotion, but being physically in places, talking to physical people, that's the real stuff. That's the real connection, and these are the fans, and it makes so much more sense than all of those hours on your phone. So I think I need to focus more actually on being physically present in places, engaging with real fans more than on the phone, which again, social media can be an amazing tool for promotion, and it has been. And I feel a sense of satisfaction that, people turn up at the gig. But if I'm honest as well, there were 4 people that came to the gig that I met the same day of the gig. And I casually was talking to them at the car park. And I was like, yeah, I'm playing a gig. And they were like, oh, well, come along. And I was like, it took a lot of reels to sell 4 tickets on Instagram. So it actually was so much nicer to just have a face-to-face connection with people. Yeah.
You obviously do the street busking, you've done that in many places. How much do you enjoy doing festivals as a contrast?
Oh, I enjoy it very much. I think I love the street, but I think any creative needs variety, and different scenarios give you different opportunities. So I feel like I've learned a lot from busking, and I've developed a lot from busking. But I also want to explore what gigging can offer. And when I gig, when I can do an indoor or a set in a good stage with all my gear, then I can have so much more. I can to start with, I can bring more guitars and do more kinds of stuff than the one guitar doing the one thing, So yeah, I think it's so much richer to do a stage, and the more I'll do it, the more I'll develop it, and it will become more of an act. Like at the show last night, when I was playing the last song, I suddenly just felt an urge to go completely acoustic. And I was singing the song. I was like, I want to be down there with these people. And I switched everything off and I walked down the stage and I just stood with the crowd. And it was, these are the things that happen when you do it more and you're more comfortable doing it. And playing a stage when you're a busker and you've been a busker for a long time actually becomes quite scary, because you're now in a raised place and everybody's looking at you, and all of a sudden everything you say is much funnier than than it is in the streets. So yeah, it's quite a contrast, and they're both different and both worth exploring.
How would you say your music has changed or evolved since, say, 2017 when Stardust came out to the new album? Has your style moved on? Have you adapted what you write about?
I think my music reflects very much me. So, like any human, my taste changes and my worries change, and it's all part of maturing, right? So, I think when I was younger, I was much more into rock music, which is funny. Whenever I go to a rock concert, I remember, I still love this, you know. But definitely my taste in music has developed, and there's a lot more other stuff that I listen to now that when I write, sometimes I go, what do I want to hear more of? I want to hear more of this, so I will make more of these. And then the subjects change the same. About nearly 2 years ago, I decided that I was kind of done writing stuff about love. Is this not done, but it's not been a relevant part of my life. So there's no point writing about that. And suddenly my songs are taking other completely different approaches. Like now I'm going on about what it's the sense of home and where am I supposed to be, maybe more philosophical, or songs about loving the music and the lifestyle. So yeah, as you mature as a human, um, and you change what the main things in your life are, then the music changes, and as your music taste develops, it also changes.
So let's talk about Heartwood then. The album's out today. Where did the title come from? Because you allude to it there that you've even got a song called Home. It has that feel of, your journey, your life, what's going on. Where was the inspiration?
The inspiration comes from another song called Hardwood by Corinne Polwart, and I absolutely love her music. I discovered this song a few years, 2 years ago maybe, and I remember I was walking on Portobello Beach. I was just having like a I need to chill type of day, and I put the music on the headphones, and that song just came on my Spotify, and I was instantly taken by it. I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. I'd love to create something like this. And I went back to my van, I grabbed my guitar, and I tried to put together all the things I was learning with the laptop, which at the time was very, very new to me. So I sat and I just played around the same melody on different grooves. And I felt like that's the perfect title. It's my guitar, and it's like the heart of the music. It's for me, it's on the guitar, and the lyrics is more like an add-on. So it actually ended up being an instrumental, and it just, yeah, I felt like the title was perfect.
So that grabs you as soon as you start listening to the album. And there's other tracks in there which you've been releasing as well. We've got Caledonia. Obviously, we're all very familiar with that, but this is your own take from there. You've got Midnight Sun, which probably alludes to things that you've seen on your journey. Home itself, what inspired Home?
Uh, I was I was in a bit of a delicate situation. I was in Norway. This was last year, and my van had broken down in the middle of nowhere, and I had no brakes. I had to wait for the parts to arrive. Yeah, it was it was quite bad, and I was living at the service station, and it was going nuts. I'd been on that service station for a week. I wrote Midnight Sun there as well, and I felt this. Sometimes I get this overwhelming feeling when you've been traveling for a long time that I just want to go home. And I started wondering, but what is home, and where am I going? It's yeah, it's quite difficult when you travel full time, because it feels like there's never rest. even if you're stuck in a service station for a week, it still doesn't feel like you're resting. So yeah, I had that I want to go home, and I started writing the song around that, and then I thought of making it an autobiographical song. So it tells you the story of how, I moved here with my guitar to play music, and then all the crazy stuff going, and how, I got my heart broken, and I worked all the jobs that you could possibly have.
And by complete contrast, another track in there's Tropical Rainy Day.
Yeah, I like the contrast of that. Midnight Sun, Tropical Rainy Day. Tropical Rainy Day I wrote when I was in Thailand, and I'd taken my guitar there, and I was, quite ready to let go of everything and just have fun. And then it just rained. It rained solidly for like 3 weeks. So I was a bit stuck as well. I think most songs are created when someone is stuck in a physical place. Like, what do I do? I'll write music. So yeah, it started as an instrumental. I thought I put lyrics to it, and then I went, nah, this is good as it is.
Something I liked about it is you've described elsewhere how some of your inspirations include the likes of Ben Howard, and I thought there was shades of his music in there, or certainly some tracks. Glen Hansard is someone else you've also flagged as being something of an inspiration, and I see you've actually met the man himself a few times.
Yeah, I've met Glenn a couple of times, which has been awesome. I even sang with him in Berlin in 2019. And Ben Howard is a late discovery for me, actually. It's funny because I remember telling Glenn in Berlin, I bumped into him and at the Nick Cave concert, as you do. And I remember telling him, I was like, hey, it's been quite crazy for me to realize that my music has taken more and more influence from you over the years, because I've known your music for years, but I never wrote like that. And the more years I write, the more I feel, oh, great, I'm finally having influences from something I enjoy. And yeah, I guess I don't think too hard about how I want a song to sound, but I just make it sound, and then I look into it and I go, oh, I can see the influence of this and that. And I think because a lot of the artists that I like found a lot of inspiration in Ben Howard, it was easy for me to go back and be like, oh, the influences of Ben Howard on others have influenced me. And then I started listening to his music, and I was like, this is gorgeous. I love this.
Glen Hansard, though, has obviously had a big career too with the Frames, but one of his biggest breaks came when he was behind a fantastic film called Once, which you've maybe seen, and it tells the story of this musician or a couple of musicians, and I won't spoil it for anybody who's still to see it there, but do you see shades of your own journey in that film as well, in terms of how it's been winding along your own particular road?
Absolutely. It's funny because I watched that movie so many years ago, and that was definitely not my life at the time. I wasn't a busker. I wasn't recording or anything, but I knew that I wanted to be a musician, a professional musician. So yeah, I remember watching the movie when I was, I think, 17, and it's probably my favorite movie. And it's been funny to watch me kind of getting closer and closer to the storyline.
So what would the movie of Laura Silverstone be called?
Random stuff happening to a woman in a van. Actually, the title of The Lady in the Van, but that already exists, and I'm also turning into that person. So
Okay, we've maybe already given some of this away, but Been chatting to you for ages, so we better move on to the quick fire round so I can let you go and do what you really should be doing rather than just blethering to me. But what was the music of your youth, and do you still carry it with you?
Definitely rock music. Um, I was very into pop punk when I was a teenager, of course. And then it developed with I really loved grunge and more. Well, it's funny. I love hard rock and grunge, and they hate each other. But basically rock music. And I always thought I was going to be a rocker, and I guess I still am in my roots. And you can kind of see it sometimes pops out randomly. Uh, but yeah, definitely. I loved Aerosmith, and I was called the Aerosmith girl for a little because I was obsessed with Aerosmith. And yeah.
Last song or podcast that you listened to?
Last podcast is a podcast about mental health. And it's in Spanish, but it's called Understand Your Mind. And it's brilliant. And the last song, oh, that's probably is Anna Stanton. She just released the song. She's an Australian singer-songwriter. And she's very young as well. And she was opening shows for Steph Strings, which I did too. And yeah, she's amazing. And she's got this singer-songwriter energy, but she still has the rock energy in it. And I was kind of maybe a little bit jealous that I was like, oh, she's done it. She has managed to be a singer-songwriter and have all the wonderful folky essence in it, and still has the banging drums in there. And she's really doing it.
What would you prefer, an exclusive album launch or a festival?
Can I have both? I think the intimate album lounge. Definitely amazing feeling to have all your friends in one room and feel the love.
Favorite food or rider?
Food or writer? Favorite food. I've got ADHD, so I will obsess about a meal for a really long time, and then I'll hate it. So since I woke up a little bit ill this morning, I'm gonna say Spanish noodle soup.
If you could collaborate with anyone alive or from history, who would it be and why?
I love to collaborate with Glen Hansard. Oh, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
Restaurant, cinema, or lazy Sunday brunch?
Lazy Sunday brunch, for sure.
Digital addict, or can you switch off?
I'm a digital addict for sure, but I'm very pleased that when I say I'm going to switch off, I can also just switch off.
What does life look like after you stop this?
I hope I never stop this.
One artist that everyone should be listening to right now.
Steph Strings.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given or would share with others?
It's your own journey. You don't have to be like anybody else, and everything will come to you when it has to come to you.
And from where you started until now, what was the good stuff in between?
The people, for sure. All the wonderful connections and all the seeing other people connect with your music, for sure.
Got a couple of dates coming up in Kinross on the 14th, Kelflacalch on 19th, and Stroon on 20th. Back to Skye. Looking forward to those.
Very much so. It's super fun to put on shows in places that I've never been before, like Kinross, and to have the contrast of I'll do Skye Studios, Skybridge Studios, and with the right promoter, and it's a really nice gig. And then Struan, it's literally going to be at my friend's cafe in a really intimate setup. So it's just so wonderful to have that contrast within the same tour.
And just finally, where can people discover your fabulous new album?
Spotify is the go. It's the place to go. Yeah, people can stream it there for free. And if they want to support my music, they can log into my website, laurasilverstone.com, and they can buy the hard copy. And that obviously helps me a lot.
Laura Silverstone, thanks once again and good luck on the road ahead.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I know now how I went so wrong. I disconnected from the power, forgot to switch myself back on.
So congratulations once again to Laura Silverstone on the release of Heartwood. Available now on all major streaming platforms. You can get more details about where she's playing and what she's up to at Laura Silverstone Music on Instagram or laurasilverstonemusic.com. This has been the Good Stuff In Between. It's been written, edited and produced by myself, Shaun Milne at Skoog Media Associates. The show's title music is Nothing's Going to Bring Me Down, courtesy of Willie Campbell. You can find out more from williecampbell.co.uk. You can get in touch with us by emailing goodstuffstudio@pm.me, DMing on Instagram at goodstuffinbetween, and as of this week you can also now find us on YouTube and Facebook, also at Good Stuff In Between. If you enjoy the show and you want to help us out, then maybe you'll consider also going to British Podcast Awards /voting and cast your vote for the show. I'm off on my travels to a few music festivals over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully I'll see a few of you there, and then I'll be back with a new show wherever you get your podcasts.
Tomorrow, nothing